spies, intrigue, and a lovely dinner? Let's talk about All the Old Knives. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch or Pass, and today I'm talking to you about All the Old Knives, which is coming to theaters and Amazon Prime on April 8th, 2022. It's a spy thriller starring Chris Pine, Thandiwe Newton, Laurence Fishburne, and Jonathan Pryce. So my hot take is I actually think you should watch it. It is an interesting, well-done spy thriller that has lots of intrigue, lots of twists and turns, and a really wonderful interchange between Chris Pine and Thandiwe Newton. I really loved the kind of the setup, the way that this was in a restaurant. I love the setting, and it did have a lot of mystery about it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then talk a little bit about the ending. So if you don't want to know anything about the film, turn this off at the ending part. So I will try to keep this spoiler free until then, but when I get to the ending, there will be spoilers. So in All the Old Knives, you have Chris Pine, who is this well-decorated CIA operative named Henry Pelham. He is investigating this incident that occurred years ago. I think it was in like the 80s. There was a hijacked plane that had landed in, I think, Austria, and the CIA was trying to get these people off. They were trying to figure out how to get onto the plane and get everyone out. Eventually, that went south, and all 100 of the hostages died. And so Chris Pine is investigating this incident because it appears that someone was leaking information to the terrorists at that time. So Chris Pine's character Henry was actually at the desk during this time. So he is interviewing essentially all of his old colleagues, trying to build a case, trying to figure out who leaked the information. And that leads him to his old flame, Celia, played by Thandiwe Newton. So they meet up for this lovely dinner, and I want to say Carmel, California. There's this beautiful oceanside restaurant, and he interviews her, but there is definitely an interplay between them. There's a cat and mouse between them because they're old friends. They're an old couple, and so there is a lot of fun chemistry and a lot of kind of intrigue in their discussion. And as the night continues, and as the more flashbacks about things that happen, you learn more and more about that night, and eventually you do find out who was the mole. So things I liked about this film, the first is the setting. I mean, most of this film, I guess the bulk of the conversation is set in this Carmel restaurant, and it is a beautiful restaurant. I love they had like these glass windows all throughout. You could see just this beautiful view of the surrounding area. And it was an interesting kind of tactic that they used, because those windows let you see kind of as the day progressed. So I think when they got there, it was either late morning or kind of early afternoon. The sun was shining. It was a beautiful day. And as they stay there, like eventually it becomes dusk, and then eventually it becomes night. And it's a really nice way to kind of show the passage of time without having to say anything. The second thing I really loved is the music. There was just this beautiful kind of soft classical music that played often, and it also had a little bit of dread to it. So it was both beautiful, but it had a little bit of tension in the music. I mean, it's kind of the perfect soundtrack for a spy thriller. It definitely helped to set the mood, and it fit with the overall setting of this kind of like restaurant in Carmel. And the last thing I really love is the intrigue. I mean, this story has a lot of twists and turns. The story has some, false leads and some, gotcha moments that end up not being accurate. You really kind of have to follow the story. I actually had to watch it twice. I got the overall sense the first time, but the second time I caught, a little bit more about what people were saying, a few hints here and there. So, but overall, it's a pretty interesting story that has plenty of mystery to it. Things I didn't love as much. The first is it's a little bit of a confusing story, especially if you don't have any background here. You kind of get introduced to characters. They introduce you slowly, but they do have a lot of characters. There's a lot of kind of connections that you have to make. So I really didn't get a good sense of the overall incident until the second watch of it. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like I like that there was a little bit of confusion, but it was tough for me to get on the first try. The second thing I didn't love, and this was actually really only kind of like one person, there was someone that showed up, but I didn't really understand why they were there. The second viewing, I did get who they were, but the first time I was like, this is weird. And then there's a scene late when they're like asking about something, and I was unsure why they were there. I was unsure why they were being directed. I got it the second time around, but still, I think it's because there's so many parties, there's so many people. Sometimes I didn't really necessarily connect who was connected to who. So, and the last thing I did not love is, I guess, the overall ending. Like I liked the ending, I liked the reveal. It was a pretty interesting kind of twist at the end. But some of the things that happened in the ending I didn't love. So I'm going to go into those very briefly. I'm just going to touch on them. So eventually you find out who the mole is. And again, spoilers. I'm going to spoil who the mole is. Sometimes you think it's this agent Jim, who was actually Celia's boss and mentor. Chris Pine seems to be kind of pushing him a lot as the person. We find out that it wasn't him, but someone called the terrorist number from his phone. So someone planted that number there. Sometimes we think it's maybe Thandiwe Newton. We find out it's not her. There's a few other members of this Austria desk that are kind of implicated, but are not the ones. We eventually find out that it is Chris Pine. It's Henry Pelham. Chris Pine's character is the mole. Now, why? Why do you ask, would he do that? Well, so that night, Chris Pine went to go meet up with Elias, which is a former asset of his who was a baker, and I think it was Ukraine, and he gave Henry information about the Iranian kind of groups in Ukraine. Now, they had developed a relationship when Henry was kind of a field agent in that area, and they developed a lot of trust. I think it was the first asset that Henry had turned. And so they had a very good relationship. They would pass information on, they trusted each other. Eventually, the CIA sold him out for some other international incident. And so Elias was captured by the Russians. He was sent to a prison. We find out that he was tortured, his leg was broken, and then he was sent back to Iran after his time in the prison. So when his family was in Iran, we find out that his daughter became sick, and he couldn't get the medicine that she needed because of American sanctions on the country at the time. So basically, she needs medicine. He can't get it because no one is allowed to, I guess, do business with Iran at the time. And so she ends up dying. That is kind of the catalyst that then radicalizes Elias and causes him to then be part of this overall terrorist incident. So when Chris Pine gets to meet up with Elias, it's actually kind of nice at the start because he gives him a Coke, just like old times. But then it becomes a little more sinister. He tells Henry to take out his phone and call his lover Celia. And so when Henry does that, someone else picks up the phone, a male voice picks up the phone, and Chris and Henry knows that Celia is at this like Muslim women meetup to kind of try to get some information there. So the fact that someone has her phone and it's a man is not a great sign. And basically, this is someone that Elias has had watching her. He has her phone. I think she probably had to check her phone at the mosque. So he has her phone. He's watching her, and basically, Elias says, "I'll kill her if you don't give me the information. Give me the information, or give me the information that you have on this operation, on this terrorist plot. Like, how is the CIA? What does the CIA know, and what are they going to do?" So Chris Pine has to choose: is he going to let the 100 people on the plane die, or is he going to let his lover die? He chooses Celia. He gives Elias some information, and that's the mole. That's who it was. And he gives him like the information of how they're going to go into the plane so that they were able to prevent that. And I think he gives them information about like an agent that was on the plane, so they were able to kind of like neutralize that agent who was giving the CIA information. So, and then eventually we find out that the all the passengers and the terrorists on the plane were gassed. They kind of like released gas to kill everyone on the plane. That was how it ultimately ended. But because Henry gave them the information, they were never able to kind of enter the plane and try to extract anyone. So we found out that Celia knew that Henry was giving this information because after they met up the night of the attack, she saw the terrorist number flash on Henry's phone. So she had suspected he was the mole, and she had like broken away from him because of that. And kind of like after the attack, she left the CIA. She kind of tried to get as far away as she could. That's why she moved to Carmel. But I guess that doubt was gnawing at her. And then when Henry was investigating the old case, her old boss, Jim, called her to warn her. And I think that kind of like triggered her to then go forward with her information and make this counter operation. She meets up with some other agents. They set up this kind of sting because they'd also suspected Henry to get him to admit to what he'd done. So, but she didn't know that he had only given the information because he was trying to save her life. So when that revelation happens, it's already too late because after that, Chris Pine starts to get a nosebleed, and apparently he was poisoned during this dinner. I think it was the wine. An earlier waiter was pouring wine. I think her hand was shaking too much, and so she was taken away, and a new waiter came who was much calmer, and I think he poisoned Henry's wine. So Henry kind of collapses. Celia leaves, and as Henry is like collapsing, he gets a call or like some sort of buzz on his earpiece. And this is where I was like a little confused. It said like, "Piccolo, I've got her right here in front of me. I've got her. You have to give me the word, yes or no," something like that. Essentially, someone is like watching Celia and ready to take her out. Because I think I think there was misinformation on misinformation. Henry had set up someone, or the agency had sent someone in to take out Celia if she was the mole. But Celia had another organization take out Henry before. So there were multiple kind of threats going on here. I didn't really understand who this person was who was going to take out Celia. They met up in the bathroom, and I didn't remember seeing them before. Maybe they were already there. But again, layers on layers. You don't really know if Celia makes that alive. You hear the agent say, like, I need a yes or no, and the screen kind of fades. But then you do see her walk away. So I think she does end up okay. I think she ends up fine. Chris Pine, I think, is dead. And so a few of the things I didn't love about the ending. First, I don't know why they killed Chris Pine. I mean, maybe they just like knocked him out, but he looked like he was dead. He was bleeding from his nose. He kind of like fell over. I think his eyes were open, but in any event, it didn't seem like they should have poisoned him. It seemed like maybe they should just, I don't know, knock him out, not actually killed him. So that was the first thing I didn't really love about the ending. And the second thing is, she knew that Henry was like a double agent for like 8 years and didn't say anything. Like, she was so sickened by the fact that he gave information out and had these 100 people die that she like left the agency and fled Carmel. But she didn't tell anyone. If you actually have a double agent, that's a lot of information that he could then pass on in those 8 years, and she just didn't do anything. That was a little weird. I thought that was kind of odd. If she actually suspected it, I feel like she probably would have said something. But again, those are both minor points. So that is All the Old Knives. Like I said, I think you should watch it. It's kind of like, it's a less involved, less grim Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. But I did like the characters. I like the setting, and I like the overall intrigue. It's coming to theaters and Amazon Prime on April 8th, 2022. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.